So, nach einem kleinen Ausflug.
Okay, now we're going to talk about Logstash, or we just heard about Logstash. That was very interesting for me as well. That is something that we don't deal with very often because it's foreign software, really. So now we're talking about news on our end again. This is the second chapter. And I'm going to start with news in the microcore. So there are a few topics here where you would say, well, what does that have to do with microcore? But we just put it in here because it only works if you use the microcore, and because just simply due to the fact that it's implemented there. So who was hoping that scheduled downtimes repeat automatically, are automatically repeated? Some of you have. So that is possible now. So that's number 8273, recurring scheduled downtimes. So what was our motivation to do that? Well, the motivation was that we really have the downtimes that are required that actually take place on a regular basis. We know that it's always Sunday from this time to that time and so on. There's a time window that's actually reserved for that. And in that time frame, monitoring is supposed to know that downtime is required now. So that means, what really does downtime mean? Downtime means that monitoring is still running. You know that it's then either red or green, but there's no actual alarm. And then also later on you can see that the scheduled downtimes are then separately evaluated. You can, for example, exclude them. You can say, well, this is not part of the evaluation process here. So those are the two most important points. So up until now, the old situation is that the scheduled downtimes just happen once. So they start, they stop, and then they're over. Some can actually do that via script once at a time, or you work with notification periods. But notification periods, you can also say Sunday between 3 and 5. But firstly, you need administration rights to that, and then also there's no alarm, and then also it's not exactly the same as a scheduled downtime. In addition to that, when it comes to problems here, it cannot be filtered. Just because there's no alarm, that doesn't mean that you don't want to see the problem. So I used to think it's a good idea in the past, but now I know that notification period is just not suitable to really do maintenance like that. Okay, so our new situation, we have thought about it, and we thought about how to implement it. And the first approach we had was that we just have a basic job that looks every minute if there's any problem, and then just does everything around it. So we would have to have a new construct, so a separate table here of recurring downtimes that are different than normal downtimes. And we thought that's just a lot of work, and that's why we said the recurring downtimes are regular scheduled downtimes. The only difference is that they just reoccur. Technically, too, they are very normal scheduled downtime. So in our monitoring core, this table of scheduled downtimes has just been extended here. So there's an extra column here that says, well, it's going to repeat itself in this cycle. So you see it in the surface as just a normal downtime. You get the same blue moon, and you also, just as a regular user, you can also delete it, you can also create it. So everybody that has the rights to actually do that, everybody that has the rights to do a downtime, can also create a recurring downtime, and they automatically repeat themselves until I say, well, I want to delete them. And this is done by the core itself now. So the scheduled downtime says, well, now I should really set up a time for next time. So I really don't need any extras here. This all happens automatically. Of course, there's a little problem here that only works with a microcore. Now we can say the notification period now have a little advantage in comparison to downtimes, because what you can do, you can say with Vato, well, if a host is the type Linux, for example, or Windows, then I need every 5 minutes a downtime to reboot. Well, let's say once a week maybe. And the idea is, if I now have a new host in my monitoring and I say it's a Windows host, then this notification period would actually happen. But if I have a script that has downtime, then what I would have to do is I would have to pay attention that new hosts get that as well, if I do it manually, for example. So that would be a lot of work here. If I have a new Windows host, for example, I cannot forget to actually have that rule as well, that downtime. Therefore, we said the recurring downtimes come in two flavors. The first one is the very normal one. That's the window everybody knows probably, and that's the command box for scheduled downtimes. So what's new here is an extra window here, as you can see in this window, and I can say, well, let's please do this once a week. That's all the information I need, because the time's already scheduled. Also, the duration is already scheduled. So this is only text here. So there's only a simple difference. So I have different options here to make it reoccurring. What's missing here is monthly, but we are waiting for that right now. So the difference between week and month is 1 week is always the same length. It's 7 times a certain amount of seconds. No, sorry, it's 86,680 times 7. And a month is always different. So the length of a month always depends on the time zone, also the country. So a week is a lot easier. That's why the week's already here. But the month is still to come. Right now you can do daily and also weekly. So in the future you can also say every first of the month, for example, you want it to happen.
Genau.
Okay, so now if I do that, then I get a very normal scheduled downtime with this little extra here, this little extra check that you can set. And again, this is going to be seen in the regular table. There's an extra column now. And in this column, you can see, is it reoccurring, or is it reoccurring weekly, monthly, and so on. So the second part here is that you can do that with a rule as well. So with this rule, I just look at the content, but not really. If you use Cmc, you already know that. If you have a host type Linux, for example, and you have host ABC, or service starts with Oracle _ something, then you can have the scheduled downtime. And the difference now for this one is that they cannot be deleted by GUI because they are part of the program here, so set by the administrator, so they cannot be deleted, and they are also valid if a new host is coming. So that means you have a sort of a policy here. The first interface is very intuitive, it's very simple, everybody can do that, everybody that has the right to set downtimes, and the second one is a configuration thing, so you do need administrative rights to do that. You can combine both of it, and there are obviously cases where it is worthwhile looking into it and using it. Okay, so overall we can say that this manual way can be done by the operator. You don't have to wait, you don't have to activate changes, and also you have the same interface as for normal downtimes. And now if you do it via the rule set, you can do that with a large number of objects, and you only need one rule for it. And also, it also works for future hosts and services that do not exist yet. So before I get to the next point, I'm wondering if you have any questions. Okay, so this is a new chapter then, alert handler. Some even call it event handler as well. I was always against that because I said we're never going to use that because it's dangerous. But I'm convinced now. They were able to convince me, and it can actually be very helpful. What's behind that? Well, during monitoring, something's happening. One service is changing from green to red or yellow. And I used to say, well, just do a notification script that works. And it's very similar to the alert handlers. But the notification script, a notification from the core is only being done, executed if there's no scheduled downtime, and also if it's a hard state. So the third try, for example, and also if there are just some conditions met. And an alert handler is just one level lower, and it's happening exactly when something is changing at that point in time. So you can perform actions upon alerts. So alert really means that some kind of color is changing. So it's from OK going to red or the other way around. And then alert handlers are also independent of notifications, but they are very similar. So it's their own world, really. And also they can appear on soft state changes. I can trigger alerts there. Who knows what soft states are? Who doesn't know? Or not yet, at least. So in Cmc, I can say, please try to do 3 check attempts. So please try 3 times whether or not it can turn back to green. And then after the 3rd time, it says, well, no, it really is not working. Now you get an alert. So after the 3rd time, it's a hard state, and after the first 2 times, it's soft state. So I could do an alert handler that says during the soft state period, can try to repair something, and then it might actually be resolved before you get the actual alert. So there is one client that's here today. I don't want to name any names. Maybe he wants to actually admit to it right now, but he said that he has Java heat memory and monitoring for that. And then if it's, for example, saving too much, then the garbage collector is actually then starting itself. And that is actually something that's possible here, and that might be very legitimate to do that. And you don't get an alert in that case. In addition to that, in terms of alert handlers, there's also an additional feature here. I can tell the Cmc that the alert should not only be triggered if the condition is changing, but for every check result. For every check result that is being executed, of course, that's a lot. And of course, you can use this interface in order to get the results for monitoring, for example, pushing them into a database. And I don't have any performance measurements with me, but the alert handlers have an interface for that that's integrated. And usually an alert handler really means that you have an external program that is being executed. So it's a script, really. So in order to start a script for things that don't happen very often, that's not a problem, but for check execution, that is really very, very much performance here. So you can use that as a Python inline function. So that means the whole alert handler is being loaded once in the beginning, then afterwards you only have the Python afterwards. So of course that is definitely a lot faster. So if this Python function is not doing a lot, for example, writing this into a pipe, then of course this can be good. So what this system does afterwards, that's a different question, but having something just attached to it, that's not a problem here. And then this alert handler could be good for bigger ones as well. So what can you use it for? We're not sure yet. We've done this for a client that had to write it in a database. That's one of the conditions they had to meet in order to prove certain things and so on. And that's really how this interface came up. So in terms of handling, it is just like the rule-based notifications. I'm going to show you something about that. So the usage is, for example, to repair things. There are some people that say monitoring is not supposed to repair anything, it's just supposed to monitor. But of course, there are so many discussions about that, and everybody has to make that decision on their own. And sometimes you don't even have that choice, because that's the only idea you have. So if monitoring has to repair it, then that's the only option you have, and you can do that now. Okay, so these alerts, if I activated the alert handlers, so the monitoring core doesn't do alerts by default as long as there's not one rule that has been defined at least. So in terms of notifications, we have a list of rules where each notification is going through step by step, and then the first rule that matches, or here it's really all rules that match, can then cause notifications here. So that is the identical principle here. So that means I have a condition here. I can say, well, if the service, for example, starts with ABC, all these conditions that you all know about, then the alert handler is not supposed to do anything. The only difference in terms of notifications is that we don't have anything to do with users here. So what modifies here are the users, and then you can have your own notification rule for each user and so on. For the alert handler, we only have one global one, and that is just being worked through. Okay, as I mentioned, handlers can be implemented. They can have the exact same as notification scripts. So it's extremely simple. The script gets due to the environment variables. They get all the information about the host or the information that they need, and then they can use the language they want, C or Java or whatever. That could work too, but usually it's Perl or Shell or Python or something like that. And then it can just do whatever it wants. And then also it can be inline Python code. That's recommended if you work on all alerts, so all check results. So if you need the performance, really. Do we have any questions? Do these alert handlers run multi-threaded? The alert handlers function in the following way. We said that it's not good if during the time it's running, the monitoring is stopping. That's why for executing the alert handler, there's a helping process in place. It's very similar to notifications. They also have that helping process. But notifications usually are emails, SMS systems that have their own pooling mechanism. So it usually happens very quickly. But alert handlers, for example, can take a very long time, because alert handlers could try to use SSH, but then maybe, it's broken anyway, so it can take a very long time. So the alert handler is starting the asynchron as external processes here. And then it looks at all the parallels, and as soon as one's done, that result is being logged. And then if the alert handler doesn't succeed, then nothing happens right away. But it could also start several at the same time. Yes, it could. But what's not included here is the limitation here, because I'm not exactly sure how to implement that. Because if you say if there's 1,000 parallel alert handlers, then we should say, well, now it's enough. But what do you do with the result then? So what's the main difference to the Nagios event handler? The Nagios event handler, I hope I'm not saying this incorrectly, but they are very, very similar. But what Nagios doesn't have is a rule-based steering when which handler is supposed to work, and they're happening synchronically. So that could possibly be bad, not for small systems, but if the monitoring stops for 10 seconds each minute, that's 1/6 of the whole monitoring period. So that's not ideal. So this alert handler, is that going to be in multi-site context in the master, or are these alerts centrally on the master? just like with the notification. Yeah, usually they are on the monitor core here, so on the side the core is at, so that's a sub-process of the core here, so it's the same, and the process that results from that is also a sub-process of that. So if it's supposed to do something, then you have to make sure that the remote actually does something. Okay, so notifications also run the same way in the beginning, but then with the spooler you can centralize it, but you can't do that with the alert handler. Would that be an important function, or are you just curious? Any other questions? We have one right here in the middle. Can an alert handler influence the monitoring core? For example, if I find out that I have services, for example, that you have to change because something changed? Technically, I would say yes. As long as you don't start or stop the core, it shouldn't be a problem. But the Cmc core is able to do a config reload. That means the core then has the alert handler, and the alert handler starts, and the core and then says the core reload the config. That shouldn't be a problem. So restart, then that would obviously be a problem, because then that couldn't work. But usually with Cmc you don't need it, so it should actually work. But we don't have very much experience with that so far, how the actual performance is in real life. So if you want to know, for example, you found new services and you want to include that in your services, then you don't need an alert handler, because there's a direct solution for that. We are going to introduce that later on in one of our presentations. The discovery check can now include services automatically. Any other questions? Okay. So another very fun tool, again, this is something that was financed and contemplated by somebody that's actually here today. And I just have a question. Which one of you actually used Live Dump before? Live Dump, that's a little tool, and what you can do with it is you can have a monitoring system, and you can extrude a system out of it, and then a status out of it, and then you have a new one. So that's really sort of like monitoring if, for example, my servers are just not there. So if you have a multi-site, you have a central system, and that is actually accessing the satellites in order to show the status, but maybe that doesn't work because the separate monitoring system, for example, is on a ship that's on the Pacific and is really just out there, and then you can't just reach it. But it then can once in a while actually send their location actively once in a while. And for that we have the Cmc Dump. Cmc Dump is the same as Live Dump, just better, and it also works with microcore. So what's better about it is what I'm going to explain to you in a little bit. So what it is a tool, and with that tool you can say, well, give me this whole status of a monitoring site, and this can then be put on a different one. So you can do the same thing for that configuration. So this is a very new way of having this monitoring with microcore. It's unidirectional, so you can really access it from the central system to the decentral systems here. So this is really all about a central system where this is really the whole show, and I don't have access to all the other systems. So of course what I can do with downtimes, I can work with that with downtimes and acknowledgements. I'm going to show you that in a little bit. Okay, let's assume I have highly separated networks, maybe for safety reasons, security reasons, and other reasons. Here, there's no access from central sites to satellites. Then have a look at Cmc Dump. That might actually be the solution. Let's imagine this is the remote side. and this is the central monitoring site,
wie ist der Ablauf?
then what happens here? In central monitoring, what we have is we have a microcore running, and this microcore needs to know what kind of hosts and services do I have on my decentral site, because that's what they actually have to show. So then I do this command, and this is exactly the one, Cmc Dump minus, and then you get this, what you need here, and this is being defined in the host. So this then I put into my central here. I do that each time my hosts and services change. As long as that's not the case, I don't have to do that. So if I have the deactivate changes in decentral, then it's a good time to actually generate that file again. So what do I do in the central system here? I put this file in any so that's a Cmc conform host and services place. So then you can do the config reload, and you have all the data in your monitoring system. So you have the hosts and services as objects right there. And what's really nice about it is that the microcore now has a concept of these hosts and services and can make sure that it doesn't get monitored there, but at the decentral place. So it's not like, well, they're just passive checks or something like that. No, what happens is it's a new flag, it's its own flag, and that means that this data is being mirrored from the other side. So that's being visualized as well. So you see this icon, and you can see that it's coming from remote. So what I want to do on a regular basis now is you need the current state of this one and put it in the central place, once a minute, for example. And what you do now is you have a Cmc dump in a state file, no -c, and then I push it right as it is into our live status object. And I can also put it in the command pipe if I want to, but the disadvantage here is that there can only be one process at a time, so this is safer. What's funny here is the state file, all that's included is all exterior demands here, that is really for one service state. So this is a new command, the normal Navios command that process service check result, that can only have the check output status, pair of data, and that's it. But this one can actually process a lot more attributes that we then can see in our project. For example, Navios can do these three things as well, but then we can also see if it's flapping or not. So the flapping information is then being transferred correctly. For example, the time of the last check execution, just because I did the dump again for this Navios system or live dump, for example, what would happen is that it would look like it would just be executed every minute. In this case, I get the right timestamp of when it was actually executed. And then check execution time, latency, and then also the attempt that I'm doing at the moment. And also hard state, soft state. In addition to that, I also get an acknowledgement and downtimes. So that means that I have a scenario here where the decentralized systems, they are acknowledging the downtime, and that is something I'm getting with my central system, and it's showing me it correctly. So that means this scenario, for example, it could also be the case that this is a system of a client. The customer doesn't allow you access, but you give them a job that actually does it once a minute, and it sends it via email once a minute, and that really makes it where you can just see the current situation. Ralph has a question. Do we have a microphone?
Yeah, one question about this. It sounds really great, but there's a scenario in my mind. If, let's say, I have a site that is completely cut off. It's instant. It has an instance. It has a monitoring configuration. It's simple, like default ratio or whatnot. Somebody pumps the data from the secured side to the master side. And there you can see all the great information. And if you now could change thresholds on the master, that would be really awesome. Then you could do the entire management and you wouldn't have to do any maintenance on the secured side. Well, in a perfect world this would work, but in this case it would be easier to zip up the agent outputs and get them to central, because as soon as, Cmc cannot say that green, red or blue, or green, yellow, red makes it within or without a threshold. There are several factors to generate a status, so this evaluation would have to happen on the master. And this means you need the exact agent output. And this method exists. Like on the internet, we have someone who gets email output by nice people who just send their monitoring data every 5 minutes by email, like their agent output. And they have a central monitoring, and then it looks like this value is present. Well, it did sound so awesome. I thought maybe you are already providing for this scenario. Well, let's say there's a customer system where I just don't have any access. But the customer says, yeah, I want to send you this every X minutes. The customer can really control what he's sending and where he's sending it. There is no access from the outside or security measures. Like a the network diode, like a firewall that can only send in one direction. So that would be sufficient in this case. But you cannot cover all scenarios. Thank you very much. Ralph was first. I tried, I'm sorry. It's me again. What about log files?
Log files?
On the decentral node we have logwatch running and want to see on our central, want to see what's happening in our central monitoring system. Well, we cannot cover that. So we cannot do that with the log files, but the graphs, the performance files, they are being tracked correctly on the central system. You said, you gave the example with the ship. So if I want to do something like this once a day, can Cmc Dump give me the historical data of the past 24 hours, for example, and give it to me so I can have a reporting like this? Well, then your precision would be 1 day. Well, if I take all the information of 1 hour, maybe not just the current state, but take the hour that just passed, all the check results, and then I want to copy them to the central system and have the reporting done there. It's worth a try, probably. It would be like this. You have the decentralized system. Once a minute you do the dump. Every 60 dumps are being sent together as a zip or whatnot. And then you would copy them to the central system. Technically that could work, but I'm not sure whether the tool can actually insert those 60 values all together, or whether it says, well, these are obsolete anyway. One would have to look into it. We haven't tested it. Maybe it needs some tweaking, but it sounds feasible. I have 2 questions. First would be, can you also do a backup with the encryption of the files, like standard encryption? Well, there is no management how we transfer the files, because there are a million ways to do it, so there's no standard. Well, you said that you also want to implement more security, so it would be an idea to to think about this. Well, in Linux there are so many options like PHP, H encryption, something like that. And my second question would be, when did this become available? 1.7 I1P1. So this conference version that we made for today is in there. On Friday there was a version release, and in that you find all the features that we are presenting here right now. I have to hurry up a little. I'm sorry, because time's running out. I talked about this. So the advantages of a multi-site are: it does not need a network access. And the second and third advantage, I don't know. I mean, multi-site is more elegant because I can access everything at once, so it's not a replacement. But in this case, it works very well. Disadvantages, just very shortly, the central site can just view and not act or react. So these transferred services, I cannot set a downtime, for example. And there's also no alarming. The microcore does know this is a mirrored service, you cannot touch it. So I cannot accidentally set a downtime that doesn't work. I mean, these are marked, it just doesn't happen. And of course there is additional latency, because if I do a transfer once per minute and then this transfer is already a minute old, then of course I have a 2-minute latency. And of course there's no central configuration because I cannot connect in this direction. And of course the transfer is something you need to take care of. So more level 2 works, I don't really want to talk about all of them. I made a list of them. Many things happened. Mostly, or many of them are just minor changes. Good. A few news when it comes to reporting and availability. There is a feature now that you have been waiting for. Finally, there is a report scheduler. Hooray! We developed it right after the last conference. So now I can automatically send reports by email on a regular time basis. Like every second Wednesday of the month. I can configure this here. Normal users can configure that as well. With the right access rights. The interesting thing is that, I mean, reports are template-based basically, so I can have a template for a house group that I don't have to set in beforehand, but that I can set while I open the report. So I make a report template, and then I open it for host group A, B, and C, and then I enter that here and put a schedule for it. So these are the most important news. There are many small changes. I counted. In the last year there were 1,500 works. One half was bug fixes, the other half was features. And so here the information about the most important, news in the slides. And then I would like to present the floor to Bastian, who will tell us more about the notification system.
Sehr schön. So. Hello. Bastian Kuhn, mein Name, wenn mich noch nicht kennen.
My name is Bastian Kuhn. I'm a consultant and developer, well, actually more consultant with the Cmc monitoring team. I would like to tell you a few things about the notification system. It's not that much, but it may be interesting for one or the other among you. The first thing is, you now have a selection of which user is receiving an alarm. This can be set now via custom macros. So you look at the user part of Cmc and you create an attribute, and in this attribute you can, for example, set somebody should be notified or not, and then this attribute can be factorized through LDABug. The rule-based notification system looks for a certain user during the notification system, like looking for that attribute, and of course with the right value for that attribute. The second interesting novelty is a new condition for notifications, which is I can now select users and user groups as a prerequisite for a rule to match. So I can create a rule and say if this service that is now sending an alarm is matched to a certain user, then this rule applies. Questions so far? Oh no.
Ist das eine und oder eine oder Verknüpfung?
Is this an and or an or connection? If I have contact group and or. No, all of them have to match. So the Nagios user has to be in the contact group everybody. Well, in this example, it's not very useful. I chose it on the basis of showing that that there is the possibility to select one user, but also there is the possibility to select a contact group. Basically, these conditions are being checked one after the other. And if the first one says no match, then this person is out of the loop. We have another question in the back. Well, it's actually left from your side, sorry. You said before that notifications can also be done using LDAB arguments. So can it also find out which AD group my user is in? I think right now it cannot do that. You can create a custom attribute and then later in the LDAB settings, in the sync settings, and then you can choose which attribute field out of LDAB should be used to set this attribute with the user. Probably there are LDAB tricks I don't know about, but I don't think to just apply it to a group. If there are no more questions, let's look at a few more minor details. For example, the Works 2188. It looks very simple and basic, but a rule-based notification now allows to match for a notification comment. It is quite useful if you are manually creating new tickets. In the Thrasher directory there is a small script that creates a new selection process in multisite which says create ticket, and then the person creating that can insert a commentary and say yes, I want a new ticket, and this little script automatically adds a prefix into the commentary, and if I match on this prefix in the rule-based notification system, then a rule is being triggered that takes care of creating a new event in the ticket system. Then there is a small issue. It's 2200. It is zip-based. It's in the rule-based notification system. It is like this: that for every status change you have an alarm or an alert, but the system then later decides whether a script needs to be executed and whether any user actually gets anything. In the past, when you had the log of a service, then you would afterwards see a lot of entries that probably didn't even lead to a notification. and these can now be deselected in the GUI, and they're not being displayed. So in 2304, in the rule-based notification system, we now have the possibility to activate bulking. So following certain attributes, you can have different notifications and bulk them up to one. So this new function is that the order can be affected in which the single messages will be displayed in a mail, for example. And the last, probably interesting novelty is in 2432. In Cmc, you have a notification spooler. If you have distributed monitoring, like modifications of all remote sites and execute them on the master. And these are now also in the central analysis function. It used to be the case that spooled messages would only be visible on the remote side, but you can also look at them now on the central system. Any questions to this? And
ab wann ist das drin mit den Notifications, dass die überall auf der
when will this be integrated, that the notifications will be in the central side, that they are being displayed in the central side, so that I can see the notifications not only on the remote side, but also on my central side. This was the commit of the last weeks. It's not long, but we didn't have this for long. Is it stable yet? Well, in the 1.7, well, last week's release. Okay, I get it. Any more questions? If not, we have the next speaker. Thank you.
So, da bin ich wieder.
There I am again.
Jetzt erzähle ich euch was zum
So
Thema
I would like to tell you something about Cmc Appliance News.
Und zwar geht es hauptsächlich darum, was sich so im letzten Jahr getan hat.
Well, basically this is about what happened in the past year.
Wahrscheinlich von vielen
A nice feature that many of you will have anticipated is the integration of the SSL configuration from the web server. Like in the past, it was the case that you would either have it on your own system, on your Linux system, or on the appliance system. You had an HTTPS configuration to encrypt web access. You had to do it manually. In appliance, you could also do it manually, but these days you can do it GUI-based. So you're in the global settings of the appliance, and you have the option to take the web access and make it secure. So the simplest setting is to just log out HTTP and redirect it to HTTPS. Of course, this is not very user-friendly. For example, if there once was a HTTP system before, then all the users who had their bookmarks in HTTP, I mean, they wouldn't get anywhere. So the most user-friendly setting is that you allow HTTP and HTTPS, but then as soon as somebody is accessing in clear text to the GUI, then you just redirect it to HTTPS in order to encrypt it automatically between the client and the appliance. In the moment when you have started the encryption, you encrypt the configuration of the appliance, so the settings of the appliance itself, and also the access to the monitoring sites. So every access to the web GUI from Cmc is now covered by this setting and is secure. When it comes to configuration, we have the Apache system underneath the web server. the recommended option, because it's always privacy safe. You can have the private key and generate it on the appliance. You can see the dialog on the right. This is how you do it. And then when you need it, you can sign the certificate yourself on the appliance for a certain time, or you download a key request, which you then send to your certificate point, and then this can be signed there, and then you upload it, so you have a valid certificate, which the client can trust and don't get a error message when they try to access it. You also have the possibility in some environments that you can have private as well as public keys coming from a central part of the company. So you cannot generate the key on the appliance, but you get a wildcard certificate from somewhere, and then you can also upload that to the appliance. So these are all possibilities and options that do exist in practice, and we covered all of these, and then you can configure it accordingly to your environment, to fit your environment. When I have configured it on the appliance side, you see the status, which is just active right now, HTTP, HTTPS, information about the certificate itself, when it expires, for example. I mean, that is an important piece of information. One day, some days, nobody can access a certain part of the system anymore because the certificate is expired. I mean, you could do this with a Cmc check and look at it all the time, but you can also look at it here through this dialog. And you can also have check and send you a notification, of course. So this is the most important, most interesting feature for those using an appliance. This is what happened the last year. Another thing that happened was that login from a local console. With appliances, it used to be the case that everybody who tried to access the local console directly, which was in, I go to the KVM switch in the central system, or I'm in a XX environment, and with the X GUI I can access that. I mean, that was all very open. And now there is a simple access log, which is a simple password, which you set once through the local console. And then you can log out on that, or you have a auto log out after 5 minutes idle, so the local console is being logged out, and so you have access protection and a bit of security, and so that nobody entering the room by accident can access this appliance. So something that's also in there, and this is about the Cmc Rec 1. The device now has an IPMI interface, so we have now a fifth interface that can be configured like this, so that on this interface you can still access that from a remote source if the system is switched off. So with other servers like ILO-bots, it's similar. That was available in an earlier version than this firmware. You had to do it through a command line. Now you can do it through the interface. You give up indicated IP and access data, and then you can control the system even when it's switched off, and from the remote you can get to the local console. So we already get to the additional features. Something that was new is new modems that we support in the appliance. We also have a web surface for SMS, so texting. We have two modems that are being offered as add-ons. You just connect them via USB, and then the device is directly being recognized, and then you insert a SIM card and a PIN, and then out of monitoring you can send out SMS notifications. Again, this saves you from doing a lot of manual configuration. So we have two USB modems. We also have network-based modems, which can be configured for these SMS notifications. I mean, these modems need to be able to support the protocol that is part of the appliance. It's nothing groundbreaking. It's just serial communication via TCP. I mean, what devices are being supported? We don't have a definitive list on the website yet, but I think on request we can tell you a few matching products. A few minor things. The administrative email address can now be configured for sites. If you have con drops in a site, for example, that may have error reports and then create error alerts, I mean, you can get these sent to an administrative email address, so this notification doesn't just end up on remote somewhere, but that you get it actually. The search domains, I mean, that's quite clear. They can be configured now. With the advanced network configuration, it's the case that we have, I mean, the configuration is the result of several configuration steps. So there are more interfaces that can be connected to a bonding interface. You can configure the bonding mode, the IP address. There are several steps here that you have to do with configuration. And now you can discard these and revert these in one go if you don't like it. I mean, you say, okay, I don't like it, I just want to set it back to as it was before. Just in Inventor we had that. You can just discard changes you just made if you're not happy with them. Vert1 can now run on a Citrix Zen server as well as on a Hyper-V as a host system. Now this works. In practice, I'm sure the ESX server is something that is most relevant to you. I mean, sometimes the host system is relevant, so this is why we added this. Or the VNX, sorry. We had a few things. System logs weren't in the log flow. Now we have adapted this accordingly, so that all log files that are relevant are now part of it, and lots of small things. The bonding mode, which is now shown in the list, and so on. If you have an EMC system and you want to monitor these, then Cmc has a special agent for this, and the difficulty was that you had to manually insert it. I mean, now we have this out of the box. We have the Navis 4 tools within the appliance. A few things we're working on. What's in the planning or development is 64-bit firmware. I mean, some of you have migrated from standard system to new appliances. They have noticed that migration was a bit more complicated than expected, because appliance firmware used to be 32-bit, but we're going to change this. We have progressed quite a bit when it comes to 64-bit. I mean, the organizational problem really is that this Cmc M1 has a 32-bit CPU, so this firmware won't work on that. So working on the hardware vendor for new hardware, and for the existing one we want to adapt the firmware for the old systems as well, so you don't have to replace everything instantly. I mean, we will keep up support for the old system. VLAN configuration is something that we have to think about in the near future. We have more and more requests coming in for that, and yeah, we will work on that. I cannot give you a time frame for this, unfortunately. I mean, I would say maybe in the next 6 months something will happen in this respect. The same goes for backup and resource solutions when it comes to the configuration of appliances and also the sites and the content of the sites. I mean, we need to really find a reasonable solution for this, a new standard. Those of you who were here in the last conference, I mean, we talked about this a year ago, but now it's really about time that we dig into these topics, and I'm sure in the near future something will happen with this, and in the next conference I can show you what we did to implement this. So this is everything I have out of my topic area, so if you have questions, please go ahead and ask them. Somebody is coming up with a microphone. The 64-bit hardware is coming. Well, what do you think? When is it coming? The firmware or the hardware? No, the hardware. I mean, if you want to order hardware now, well, the rack appliance is already 64-bit compatible. The virtual appliance as well. The Rail 1 that will, well, we don't have a time frame really. The vendor said something about it's probably first quarter of next year we can present something. So we hope that in January we'll have the first testing systems and prepare everything that is necessary for system migration. And then in February we can go ahead with it. So I would say first quarter of next year. Okay, so somebody keeps pointing at their watch, so now we have a break again. You can hang about if you want. If you have questions about this, you can always talk to me, and yeah, please just go ahead and ask. Enjoy.